All right. Hey guys, thank you so much for actually joining me today in learning. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much for Ruben and the team for actually inviting me on and having me here. I really, really appreciate that. And thank you guys for actually showing up today because the truth is, man, you can't win anything unless you show up to it. All right. So, a little bit of, is it okay if I tell you guys a little bit about myself? Is that cool? Yeah.
Please, please.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. I appreciate it. For sure. I always ask permission. So my name is Victor Bell. I actually been doing this since the mid 90s or so. My first year started with I got a book from the store, and that first year I did about 1.2 million in real estate. Since then, I've actually done $57 million in real estate transactions plus. I thought it was less than that, but my accountant was like, dude, you buy stuff twice. So I had to go back and really change that. I'm a best-selling author of 30 Days of War. Bam. I've written actually 4 other books. I have about 20 other programs, but they're kind of condensed into 8 business programs. Everything from real estate investing, business sales, marketing. I used to be a coach and trainer for Dave Lindahl with Apartment House Riches. They actually teach and educate people on how to buy multifamily properties and things like that. But the reason why I'm here today is because I'm looking to scale my business, and I actually just started a real estate fund, a $25 million fund. The goal is to be able to be pretty much one of the largest players here in North County, San Diego. We just moved here 3 years ago. So that's a little about me. And I apologize, guys. I talk fast. So you can watch the replay and kind of slow things down, but I appreciate it. So I just want to be upfront about that. So, but that's about me. The big thing, though, for today's purposes was, it's always a glaring question. It's like, how do I find the deals? There's only really 3 main parts of real estate investing. Period. Find the deals, fund the deals, manage the deals, and then and then exit the deals, right? Because you got to get paid. So no one joins real estate because you want to just make a earnest living. Everybody comes to real estate investing because they want to get rich. You want to be successful. You want to take care of your family. And like I always say, wealth is your duty. So that's my introduction. But today with you guys, I definitely want to go over how to find deals. Is that cool?
Perfect.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, cool.
Perfect.
And I am extremely known for making things really simple. Because if it's complicated, I probably am going to shy away from it. And I think it's important for that because a lot of people take something complicated and they make it real more complicated because they want to look smart. I don't want to look smart. I want to succeed. I want to help other people succeed. And that's more important to me. So if you have any questions, by all means, let me know. If you have any questions or anything like that today, feel free to stop me. And advice to anybody that I ever speak to, I always tell the same thing: come willing to steal. If you aren't willing to come willing to steal, then you won't get much out of this. So you have to come being extremely selfish, willing to steal information, willing to show up 100% and stop somebody and ask them, hey, could you get more clear on that? Because I need this. All right. So definitely got my permission for that, 100%. Um, yeah, so that's it. So if you're cool, I'll just roll right through with what I got.
Let's go. I'm excited. I've been waiting for a while for this. Please give it to us.
Perfect, perfect. You got. I appreciate that. Well, first thing, like I said earlier, and it's something that I'm actually leading with, especially now, is my goal with my company with Bell Capital is to start leveling the playing field for the everyday investor, right? Because there's properties that trade all the time that they're not going to call you and say, hey, Blackstone's not going to call you and say, hey, Uganda, Omar, we have a deal. Do you want it? Like they're just not, right? So for me, I started realizing like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm watching deals go away that are nice. I'm like, man, it's nice. I wish I could have got that. I'm not getting those phone calls. So when I started taking an honest look at that, okay, why aren't they calling me? Why aren't they calling my friends? Because the wealthy are kind of sticking to that. So I was like, it's my duty to make sure that I get wealthy, right? So I'm a definitions guy. So when I looked up the definition for wealth, because we've all been taught different things, right? And it kind of gets lost in translation. But the definition of wealth, I like to go to origins versus just today's definition and work my way up. But the original definition back in in the 13th century meant actual happiness, prosperity, and abundance of possessions or riches. And it's from Middle English, also well-being, right? Another version of this as a noun is health. So if you think about it from that perspective, it's your duty to be financially healthy. It's your duty to be financially wealthy. If you have a family, it's your duty to make sure that you create wealth for them. It's not their responsibility. And when I say responsibility, I'm talking about take responsibility for all of it, right?
Mhm.
And we've talked about that quite a bit. Ruben and I have talked about it quite a bit. So I think it's important to share that when I say wealth is your duty, It is your responsibility to make good decisions, to make good deals, and to create wealth and income for you and your family forever. Right? Like it's impossible to not think that way. And I wrote notes because I'm gonna run hard, and I'm like, man, they're gonna be like, we don't like that guy because he talks fast. So, so the biggest part about all of this is finding deals, right? And which is the reason why we're here, because that's a part of your wealth, right? First thing about finding a deal is you need to know why this is a deal for you, right? Because a lot of people will say, hey, because I get it all the time. People, like, hey, why don't we look at this beat up junk fixer upper? And I'm like, I've never done those. I've never flipped a property. I've never bought a property specifically that was run down to fix it up and sell it. Why? It's not my skill set. I don't even cut my own grass. Like we literally have asked, like, what is that turf in the backyard? Because I'm like, dude, I'm not doing that. I don't wash my own car. I don't. And it's not because I'm lazy. It's just because I had a lawn service. I hated it. I started washing cars when I was young for money and I hated it. So there's a reason why I look at certain deals that somebody else is happy. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. You do it. So you need to know that about yourself, because if you're going to create wealth, wealth is long term. You can first, you're going to make money, then you're going to get rich, then you're going to create wealth. So if you don't have wealth on the forefront of your decision making process for looking at any deal somebody brings you, you're going to be struggling hard. You're going to say, I'm going to buy houses, I'm going to buy trailer parks, I'm going to buy commercial property, I'm going to buy this beat up fixer upper with my mom. Like you're going to be all over the place. And if you get somebody like me, he goes, hey, you're a real estate investor, what do you do? And you go, oh, I have this. And I'm going to be like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Oh, I cuss, my bad. You can cut it out later. I cuss all the time. I'm a sale. But so it makes my jokes funnier too. But but if you are in that phase where you haven't decided once and for all what's the deal for you, you cannot create wealth. You have to have a direction. You got to have the blinders on to say what to say yes to, what to say no to. So number one, what is wealth for you, or what is a deal for you? And so it isn't real estate at all. It's like, what do you need right now? Right. So I've had students in the past where, they've been in my mentor program and stuff. And a lot of them are like, oh, I want to buy whatever. I want to buy a 100-unit building. And I'm like, okay, so how much money do you make? Well, I make, $5,000 a month. I'm like, okay, well, you really need $5,000 cash flow a month. So that's your target. It's not a 100-unit deal, because you can make $5,000 cash flow with a 40-unit deal or 20-unit deal. Like you just need to kind of massage things differently to know first what your needs are, right? How much money do you need? First, always get free, right? Even if that takes time. So number one is what your needs are, how much money you need. Number two is how much time do you have? Because this is a business. This is a real business. I just had a great friend of mine. She's awesome. She's a doctor. She was buying an apartment building. I was helping her do that. And I was telling her, hey, you need to call them. You need to push this down. And she was losing hours during the day because she had to be, she's a doctor. And sure enough, that deal didn't close. She lost about $8,000 on an appraisal, because this is big boy space in commercial. And she was like, man, that sucked. That stung. And I was like, yeah, this is a business. This takes time. So the number two thing is how much time do you have? Because this isn't a dabble. This isn't something you do on the side. This is something that you give 100% of your time and energy to, because this is going to be something that's going to take on a big shape for you, and it can change your life. So if you don't know how much money you need to make or why you need this specific type of property, and you also don't know how much time you can put into this thing will sink your battleship. I always tell people that. I'm like, I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm trying to prepare you, right? Hey, that's good. I'm gonna write that down. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to prepare you. But so every once in a while I drop a bomb or a nugget or something. But so, and then the other thing about this is what is your pain threshold? It's not painful per se, but you're going to be dealing with a lot of people at a lot of different times. And some people don't have the capacity to do that. My wife is awesome, but there's things that she just doesn't have the capacity to do in the apartment, multifamily, commercial space, because it's different players, different language, a lot of egos. So as you get into any form of real estate, it's like that in a single family house too. You got some guy who owns 20 deals and he thinks he's the man, and you talk to him and all he wants you to do is pay for lunch and buy him a drink at Starbucks, and because he thinks he's helping you. But you got to know what your capacity is as you're dealing with people, right? So when I say pain threshold, I'll move that away. Let's just say your ability to handle pressure, because you're going to apply pressure on people You're going to have to accept pressure from people, and you're going to have to hold the line on that. So you need to also know who you are. So one, how much money do you need? Why are you doing this? Two, how much time do you have? And what is your real capacity to make sure that you see a job done from start to finish? And Omar, you had a great question before we started this. What's the exit? How long? Like, are we holding it or not? That's pressure. That's capacity. Can you sit in a deal for 10 years? A lot can happen in 10 years. Kids get sick, divorce. It don't have to be you getting divorced. It could be your partners. And you need to know that whether you want to show up to court and fight somebody's wife. Because they're going to come. Right. So these are things nobody taught me that I've experienced in having all the different partnerships, raising money, buying a deal that I thought I was going to be in for 1 year, and I sat in it for 5. But all these things matter. So knowing what is right for you is really important. So if you want to write these things down, again, if you hadn't already, take notes on them. What do you need right now? Like, are you looking for financial freedom? Are you trying to exit a job? Are you trying to do this part-time? You can do this part-time or you can do it full-time if your wife has an income or your husband has an income or somebody in your household is supporting what you're doing, because you definitely need support, because there's going to be times it gets tough and you're going to have somebody to kick you back onto the battlefield and say, look, pick your sword up, go back out and go do what you got to do, because you're doing this for us. It goes right back to wealth, right? It's your duty, it's your responsibility to do it. So as you can tell, I take this extremely seriously, right? So so that's that. So as it relates to, first off, if you have 1 hour a day, great. If you got 5 hours a day, great. If you got 10 hours a day, great. But you just need to know that, and you need to commit to it, right? Second, how much money do you actually need? Let's say you have a job where you make 10 grand a month, or you make 6 grand a month, or whatever, right? So you go, look, you know what? If I got $5,000 coming in, or even $3,000 coming in off of the real estate that I bought a month, I'd be happy. And that would actually free me up, because if my job is paying me 6 grand, but I'm getting 3 grand for my real estate, I can actually cut back on work time, and I can put more time into my real estate investing. And then now I can leapfrog, because now I'll only need 3 grand a month, 36 grand a year. That's not that bad, right? That's how I divvy that up. Go ahead.
Excuse me. I was asking because, like, a lot of people are turning over to real estate because they have lost their jobs because of the pandemic and all that's
Mhm.
been going on. So you're saying that they need to have a steady income coming in to get into real estate?
No, no, not at all. I didn't have a job when I got into real estate. I had nothing. I had less than zero. So, but here's the difference though. If you got to survive at the same time, it is
Mm,
very difficult, right? Because you got to, I mean, you got to eat.
right.
So no, you do not need a job, because your job is not indicative to what you can find. There's different ways to find a deal. Well, no,
Mhm,
I'm sorry. There's different ways to do a deal, not find a deal. You can find a deal in seconds, but can you do that deal, right?
mhm,
Um, and here's, I'll say this, and people get on me for this. In real estate, it's not win-win. It's I win, and you got to make sense of whatever's left over. Like if there's one property and there's 10 people going after it, and I get it, 9 people are going to go away, right?
mhm,
So if you got to eat. You're like, man, I needed that deal. It's going to cause you to make mistakes, and it's going to cause you to take on property or a deal that you shouldn't have, because you're hungry. You got to survive. You got to take care of yourself, and
okay.
in hope, and real estate's, because it's a real asset and there's money involved, there's people involved. It's not fast.
Mhm,
The average single family house, if you're going to do stuff that I have done, is going to take you a minimum of 4 months.
mhm,
And if you can't hold your breath underwater for 4 months financially, don't do it. Get with somebody like me who knows what they're doing, and play that game with me. Because I'm gonna survive. I'm gonna kind of keep everybody going. And once you get paid, great, you get paid. But I mean, it's different. It's different. So, but that was a great question. Thank you for asking that,
mhm,
because you don't need money, you don't need credit. I mean, not that those things aren't needed. And I'm talking about the smaller deals. I'm not talking. You're not going to get into a bigger deal without money and credit. Just that doesn't happen. But
mhm,
as you're getting started, let's say you find, I like multifamily.
mhm,
One, because if you were to get a multi, let's say I'm not suggesting you do this, but if you have to start somewhere, you got to start somewhere, right? Let's say
mhm,
you get a 4 unit building or a 5 unit building, 5 units, 6 units or better if you're going to do that, because
mhm,
you'll have income coming in to support the property, right?
right.
So that makes more sense. And if you need to eat a little bit, you're like, okay, I can pay myself for managing it per month while I get the property turned around, because this is happening,
Mhm,
But that's that's in kind of in the finance stuff because I go through a lot of creative financing to get the deal, control the deal, everything. I just did one the other day. We just inked another deal. I didn't want to do it, but I did it because I like money. But so but in this same situation, it cost me nothing to do, cost me no credit. It doesn't cost anything, but it does take time and it does cost time, right? Yeah, for sure. So that's huge. So that's a great question though.
That's
So
great. That's great to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, man. Like, just kind of sticking on that topic a little bit as far as like starting and your suggestion of finding of like a multi-unit property and then taking on the responsibility of managing it to be able to pay yourself. But still,
yes,
in that, I know there's a ton of creative ways to make that happen. But what are some of the creative ways if you don't have money and you want to and you have the opportunity to get a deal like that, a multi-unit property? What would be like one of the approaches to go ahead and lock that in?
find the deal.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like at some point in real estate investing, there's typically two things happening all at the same time. There's someone with a lot of money and no time, so they can't find the deal. There's
Yeah.
someone that has the time to find the deal, but they don't have the money, capital, and credit, right?
Okay.
So that's how I started. I'm like, dude, I don't have any money, right? No one even
Okay.
knows it exists. So I was willing to go find a deal, and I was willing to do whatever it took. Like the person that helped me, I literally cold called him and was like, hey, I'll clean coffee stains off your desk. I'll cut your grass. I'll clean your car. All the shit I hate. And he was like, man, I like you coming to my office. And that's how I started. So I
Okay.
had someone take me under their wing. He owned a mortgage company. So
Mm.
he funded my deals, right? We
Gotcha.
partnered on the deals. I learned a lot through that experience about what to do, what not to do, because, I'm like, okay, when you don't have any money, the rug can get pulled underneath you really quick and you'll accept what you normally wouldn't accept if you have money, right? Yeah, for sure. So that's a great question, Omar, because when you get really good at talking to people, really, real estate is really just about doing what you say you're going to do. You can't steal from someone twice in this business, right? You get a reputation really quickly of what not to do, and people will spread your name like a venereal disease quickly. So when you know that, then you really start to push really hard. So like the question, Omar, is like, man, find a deal. Find a deal that everybody else would want and that people with money wouldn't be able to find because it's not something their money would actually turn them on to.
Got it. So then I
Right?
guess that's the part of it. So then the deal. So like you said, you have the deal. You found the deal. You found this property that can potentially bring in some return on investment. And then are you aligning yourself? I guess like you said, you went out and had somebody that you can go and say, hey, I'll clean your coffee table. I'll do these things. So that part of finding the investor, how did you approach that? Did you already know that person, or was that
No,
somebody
I
that you
literally cold called these people out of the phone book.
got you?
That's
Okay.
how long ago this was. Like I grabbed the phone book, I sat down, and I started from the A's. It was in Austin, in the A's of the phone book, and I got all the way to the S's. This was in mortgage companies before anybody even took my call.
Got
So I
you.
didn't have nothing else to do, but I had already made a. So I'm an all-in person, so I don't necessarily ever have all the answers. I just say yes, and then I go figure it out. So I happened to call somebody who had an ad in the paper of a house for sale. I got that book. It said basically cut their number in half. He wanted 30 grand and see if they'll take half, 15,000, right? And he was like, yeah, sure. Come down to my freaking office. And I was like, oh hell, what do I do now? I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I don't have the money, but I made the promise. And then it was like, okay, call mortgage companies. So I called mortgage companies like, hey, I'm Victor. I got a deal. I'm looking for somebody to partner with. And do you have a few minutes to talk to me about this? Everyone said no, because that's not what they do, right?
Right.
I just happened to, but then I shifted my conversation because I made so many phone calls, which is what I'm notorious for. Like, I'm not a lucky person, but I'm willing to continue to ask and shift as I go. As I start getting no's, I start like, hey, well, what would you made you say yes? And they're like, well, we do this. So I got better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So finally, I was like, hey, I need to talk to somebody in your REO department. REO departments do not buy properties, but they do deal with pre-foreclosures and stuff, that. And I was like, I'm looking for somebody to actually fund the deal that I have under contract. That sounded better to those people.
Got it.
Right? And then they were like, yeah, sure. What do you got? And then I was like, look, I just cold called a bunch of people out of the newspaper. I got a guy to say yes to me. And they're like, how'd you get this number? And I'm going through the story with you so you see what I'm saying. And he was like, Do they have more properties? Call them back and find out, do they have more properties? So now he's coaching me because one, I showed work ethic. Two, I was talking the way that they needed to hear me talk. So they didn't know I was new. They knew I hadn't done a deal, but they didn't know how new I was.
Right.
Like reading a book new. And then after that, it was just like, once he was like, I did what he said, called the guy back. His name was Junior Mayo. They had about 300 properties.
Wow.
And I was like, would you sell me more properties if I do this one? He's like, yeah, sure. So I called Bob back, and Bob was like, really? Okay, yeah, come to my office. And I was like, look, if you teach me this business, I'll do whatever it takes. Right. And I had a job. I was working at the time, like working nights. So I was driving to Austin from where I lived at, which was an hour away, to come and sit in his office 2 hours before I had to go to normal work and then get off work at midnight. So, I was committed to this thing. So there's a big difference in finding a deal. So I used the deal to dangle as a carrot that somebody with money wasn't going to be. They were going to be able to find a guy with 300 properties ready to let go 24 of them tomorrow at a discount.
Wow.
Right. So, and it wasn't luck. So at some point, yes, but I work my ass off to get to that one phone call.
Right.
Those two phone calls, and actually, Ruben's met Bob's partner because they own the company together. Jamie, she's actually my investor relations manager now. She works with my company. So imagine the shift in this world.
Yes.
But that's why I said, first, you got to know what you need. You got to know why you're doing what you're doing and where you're willing to take this thing. And it's a long play. Unlike other people, I didn't have a job. I don't have a degree. I'm not an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that to fall back on. So sometimes not having something to fall back on does make you a little bit more powerful and give you staying power. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. And that's not even me being cool about it either. I was deadly afraid. I'm still afraid. I go to bed afraid every night that I'm going to fail my family. That's my biggest fear, is not being who I think that I am as a human being, right? So for sure. So question.
I just wanted to know more steps.
Yeah, for sure. I'm getting to that. I apologize. So and that's what I wanted. I wanted to have more of an interactive conversation because the steps matter.
Yeah.
But the reason for the steps, the intention.
It does matter, and it makes sense because you're making it real.
For sure.
It makes sense.
Well, I appreciate that.
Explain things like this, giving us real, true stories. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. So number one is you got to, I tell people how to find the deals. You have to start in your own backyard, right? Which is why you start with the other pieces first. Why are you doing what you're doing? How much money do you need? How much time do you have? So if you start in your own backyard, typically about 1 mile away from where you live at, and you stretch it out to about 5 to 10 miles, start off 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, and you start looking at all the properties that you think are going to give you what you need, right? Based on your time, based on your experience, and then also based on what your needs are. So when you start that way, you begin to learn everything that you need to know about the property that you're looking for. So like, for example, when I started, that first deal was in my own backyard. That person, Bob and Jamie, their office was in Austin, an hour away. So I was the expert, even though I was new. I knew more than them, right? Because that was more important, right? I knew what I was doing. They didn't. So in that moment, that's why from how to start, where to look, always start between 1 to 5 miles away from where you live today. Even if people say, yeah, well, it's really expensive. Well, it's only expensive to outsiders. Right? Because I don't know where you guys live, but we live in San Diego County. We live in California. I live in Oceanside, and I go all the way to all the way through to every corner of San Diego County. I've been here for 3 years now, and I know everything that trades. I know primarily most of the players in my space because I started off just what I said. We moved here. We lived in a hotel. I only looked at properties in Oceanside. And then I pushed out to Vista, and then I pushed out to Escondido, and then I pushed out. So I'm doing what I was like, okay. So then when brokers talk to me, like, hey, I just saw that property. What are your thoughts? So I was asking more educated questions. The more educated I got about where I am. But a lot of people say, well, it's cheaper in Ohio. Like, yeah, well, fly to Ohio. Go there a couple of months and start seeing what's what, because you don't know what's good and bad yet, which leads me to number 2, which is learn your market. You can't learn the market until you walk the market, right? And when I talk about learning the market, there's a couple of things that I like to look at when looking at a market to learn. Number one, what are the rents? And number two, when I talk about markets, now I'm talking about good, bad areas, right? And like I said earlier, I actually don't do beat up fixer upper properties. I like nice properties. Always. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to buy a place that I don't want. People like, you don't have to live in it. Well, what if I did? Huge question, right? Well, people buy bad properties in bad areas and go, well, I'm not living there. Like, yeah, but what if you did? What if your kids grew up and they had to live there? Do you think if you got hit in the head today or you slipped in the bathtub and forgot your memory, your kids put you in a home, that the property you bought, they're going to want? Because I can promise you they won't. If you're doing the right thing, your kids are going to want better than what you've ever provided for them. So if you buy something you don't want, they ain't going to want it either. And they're going to liquidate it and your life work will be nothing. Goose egg. So you got to learn, first you learn the rents and then you learn the areas and the markets, right? And how do you do that? I do it all the time, like not with this, but I have a clipboard. Keep it in my car. I keep it in my trunk. And this is valuable. You write this down. If you want to know what rents are, grab a clipboard. You need to look important. Put a white shirt on. Always white shirt, because white shirt looks like an inspector. Okay. And just go knock on a manager's door and say, hey, we're doing a rent analysis or rent comparisons with all the properties around here. Just trying to figure out what are your 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms rent for. Write it down. How many vacancies do you think you have in your ones? How many do you think you have in your twos? Is this a good neighborhood? I mean, are the tenants happy? Do they tend to, pay on time? And they'll tell you, like, hey, you know what? After I do a rent comparison for a couple of properties, do you want a copy of it? Yeah, for sure. Hey, by the way, does the owner actually, do you have challenges sometimes with getting the owner to kind of fix some of the things, and that's keeping some of the damages, keeping you from renting some of these places? Yeah. Sometimes that happens. No, our owner is pretty responsive. We're able to fix things pretty quickly. And they're like, oh, okay, well, hey, thanks so much. And then they go, hey, who are you? You have a card? Just like, yeah, you know what? Here's my card. Give them a card. You're like, you know what? I don't have any cards on me. I ran out. Here's my number. Feel free to give me a call. It don't matter, right? Do that if you can. That's what I do. Like, I always know what the rents are. And somebody can say, hey, and I'm going through the other piece of why to do that. Because if you look at an area and it's bad, not because somebody told you it's good, but because you walked around and you're like, dude, no way. There's trash everywhere. This property looks dead. Dead meaning like there's no one walking around. There's nobody. There's no kids playing. Nothing's happening at this property, right? If you get there and you can look at yourself honestly and say they charge $1,500 a month for rent. I couldn't see my way straight to pay $1,500 for rent. Even if I had it, I wouldn't pay it. Right? You have to know that, because I've lived in places that were rat and roach infested, and I've also lived beachfront properties for a really long time. So I know what I'm willing to pay, because I'm a renter. I don't believe in buying my own home to live in. That's stupid, right? So I go over that later. but it's important to know these things, and I hope this is helping, because it's one thing to be like, yep, somebody sent me a deal and they said the rents are $1,900, but you didn't go buy, you didn't talk to the competitors, because let's say that they're saying, yep, it's $1,900 because we just renovated the units, but then you go to all the properties around it and they're all rented for $1,500. And you go, well, we'll get a better class of tenant. You won't, right? Nice things surrounded by, we call them dogs. If your property surrounded by a bunch of dogs, your dogs are going to pull it down. Right? You'd rather not be in that situation, because like Omar said, how do you get out? Right? If I got to convince me that this is a good deal, I can't convince you.
Right. That makes sense.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
So number one, stick to your own neighborhood, and then push your way out. So you start knowing, okay, that's this area, that's this area, this is this. Second, learn the rents and learn the market. This is what this thing is renting for. And in this neighborhood, they rent for this. In this neighborhood right across the street or down the street, they rent for this. This one's next to, Ralph's or Trader Joe's, or moving towards Whole Foods, and then this one's next to like Foodland, or in Walmart or whatever, right? So you need to know where people are, and it's indicative to what people will pay, right? Because real estate is not a real estate game; it's a rental game. That's it. Like, everyone asks, like, why you love California? Like, because rents are going to continue to go up here, and people are never going to leave it, right? They'll find a way to pay. So and next one, I suggest, and it's actually in my book too, right? Because I wrote a book. Look at least 25 deals. I probably look at about 25 to 30 deals a week. Personally, I walk probably. I know I walk at least 1,000 doors a week. Like literally, park my car, get nosy, walk around properties, take pictures, do videos and stuff like that. Talk to the people who live there. I lie. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about moving my family here. Do you guys like it? Like, do you think the rent's cool? Is the manager cool? What would you change about this place if you could change anything? I start talking to them, right? Because I don't care what anyone else says to me. I care what the people who live there say because they're the ones paying the bills, right? So that's important. So when you walk a lot of deals like that, you talk to a lot of people, you're doing a real survey. Aside from what some broker is going to send you online who's sitting in his office, that's important to know what they think. But that doesn't mean that that's what that property is going to do, right? So that's important to know that. So like we said, finding a deal, one, you got to, be boots on the ground in your own area, know where you live, and then push out. Two, know the market and your rents, like what's a good deal, what's not, what are people willing to pay and for what, right? And I wrote this down so I didn't lose it. Yeah, those are the main three things. I mean, there's a lot more, but as it relates to today, let's just say somebody's getting started, or let's just say you're an advanced person. One, if you're advanced, I'm telling the truth. There's at no point, because the first thing I'm going to say, like, have you seen the deal? No, I didn't go there. Okay, well, when you see it, call me. As a matter of fact, that's how you get people to call you back. If a broker sends you a deal, just like, awesome, I saw that deal. As a matter of fact, I walked the deal yesterday. I love it. Or, hey, I walked the deal yesterday. What do you think about the location? Don't say the location's shitty. You ask them. Like, it's this. Like, okay, great. I love it. I love the property. Don't tear it down. Like, do you have something else? Because I'm looking for a different location for what I'm trying to do. Like, your conversation becomes real. Because other than that, they don't know. Because they probably haven't walked the property yet either. They walked it once and never went back.
So, Victor, do you
Yes.
have like any examples of a real property that you can
Yeah.
just give us all an example
Yeah,
of
for
how
sure.
this would really happen? If
Yeah,
so,
of course.
could you like break that down for us?
Yeah,
Like,
thank you for asking that. I think Ruben has a picture. So this property is one I actually missed out on. This property, I had a horse in the race. I put an offer on property, but I wasn't able to get the deal. I didn't get awarded the deal.
okay, but that's a nice property. Okay,
So
so
that one
for the
is
type of
100 and
properties that you go for,
yes.
basically. Okay.
Well, yeah, for sure. Now a little bit nicer because I've walked so many properties in San Diego County. I know that this is an older property. It's going to have a different tenant mix, and it's also going to have a different upside to it. So now I'm actually looking at properties like this or better. So this is probably the lower run of the properties that I'm looking at. So this one was 128 units, if I'm not mistaken. It only had one owner. Great location. So I'll tell you the key points about this deal. So this deal, great location, right down the street from Sprouts, Dunkin' Donuts, a new Starbucks. Great location. It covers a whole city block, covers the whole block. All the houses around it are 700,000-800,000 or so, and then there's a new development right down the street, less than 2 miles away, that are in that same price range, brand new stuff. So I knew that this property was in a great thing because a lot of times when you get an apartment complex like this or apartment community like this, people are getting it, one, for the school district if they're going to be there because it was a good mix of units, ones and twos, right? But really, they want that zip code. They want the neighborhood. And let's face it, if you can rent, right? Because you're going to be a renter. I mean, we're all moving to renter nation, right? All of us. So, but if you can rent a place like this for $1,800 a month or $1,600 a month, and it's affordable and it's clean, it's got a swimming pool, it's got a playground, it's got everything near great schools, great shopping, it's near the highway for jobs, things like that. And you're around $800,000-$900,000 homes, brand new homes across the street, brand new, like that all matters because as it relates to that, it's a story. So a broker sent me this deal. I looked at okay, so here's how this works. Just what I told you happened. I just got here. I looked at another deal because I jumped on one of the websites online. It's called LoopNet. And I took a look at a deal that this person had listed. I called the broker. I actually went to the property first. I drove around it. And it wasn't what I was looking for. It was actually started with an E, Escondido, so it was in Escondido. Might have been El Cajon. No, Escondido. So I went to take a look at the other property. It was a 22 unit. And I was like, hey, I love that property. I love the location. He was like, oh, that one just went into contract. I was like, well, do you have something bigger similar to this? And he was like, I might. Let me kind of touch bases. And he screened me a little bit. Like, hey, what are you looking for? How much? What's your, there's a couple of different terms in there. We'll go over those terms on a different show. And he was like, what about this? And I was like, dude, I love it. So I went over to go see it right away. And I was like, what do you think about the neighborhood? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? But I had already went out and did my own scouting, right? He sent it over to me. I went to go see it. And then I was like, look, I love the deal. I'm new. I don't think I'll have a problem getting the debt. I'm just going to have to convince a few of my investors in my pool of investors that this will be a good deal. So I want to put a horse in the race first, but I'm confident I can get the deal done. Right. And I was like, what do you think this thing is going to trade at? And who's the lender? Right. And he told me, I think it's going to trade for this. It's never been on the market before. This is one of those deals where it has to be sold. There's an appraisal for $30 million on the deal, which is a smoking hot deal. Oh my gosh, dude. That thing is probably worth, I know it's worth at least 39 to 40 million right now. And it's been less than 3 years.
Wow.
Guaranteed, because they got in and pushed rents. The rents had never been pushed before, and they didn't go nuts doing anything. There's nothing really that needed to be done except exterior work. But anyways, so I put an offer for 27, and I circled the money around because I knew that we were going to need probably about 30 to 40% down. I talked to the lender on the deal, which I still have a connection with the lender that we didn't do a deal together, but he knew I was in the running on this one. So these are the type of things that we do. But just like I said, I started off looking at Oceanside, and then I pushed out. I learned Oceanside, and I was like, okay, where's the next area? And then I was like, okay, Vista. And I learned Vista. And then I got real bullish on Vista. I was like, oh, I love Vista. I love Vista. And then I started pushing out. I started to get to know the owners in the area and the brokers who had listings there. All right. And I'm telling them, hey, I'm new here, but I've seen this deal. I've seen this deal. I've seen this deal. So even though I hadn't bought anything there yet, I knew what I was talking about, which is why I said, start off looking at your own area, because that broker don't live in Vista. I knew more about Vista than he did.
Right.
So he was telling me where roads were, and I was like, oh yeah, I know that road. As a matter of fact, that road leads to this other thing, this other property that traded for X. Did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. What do you think about it? I was like, man, I loved it. So I was able to hold a longer conversation because I was able to hold a conversation with somebody, because I made it real to me and him, right? Because this is all sales. This has nothing to do with real estate. So that is a real deal. Now, the situation on that deal was, and I'm going to share this with you guys because this is important in finding deals. Why finding deals and doing all this stuff that I said, even though I'm touching the top of it, why this is important? Because you're going to have to sell people, one on you, two on the deal. And we're in a time right now where you have to convince investors, money people, that what they used to get is gone. Right? Yeah, you think you are going to get this huge return, but on a deal like this, you have less risk and it's a more qualified deal. This is a more conservative deal. This is the return on the deal like this. The goal here is not to lose money and to get cash flow from the deal and to get future appreciation while we wait. Right? So, but if you have some investor who's used to doing turn and burn flips, he wants 12, 13, 15% return on his money. And you're like, yeah, no one's getting that. Unless you go to Ohio. We're not buying in Ohio. We're not buying in, we're not buying in the butt crack of the USA anymore. Right? We're in places where people want to be. But you can't, it's not an argument, but it's like going to court. Like your attorney, builds a case to defend you, right? So you can win the case. And if you don't have, hey, I did a rent comparison. Here's what I got. I went to about 6 other properties around there. This is what they're renting for. I talked to the managers. I talked to tenants. I know, Sprouts, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. I don't have to look hard to find the demographics of them because they look for places that people have, discretionary income to spend $200 on a bag of groceries. So, so you start sounding better and you start sounding like you're not an idiot as it relates to finding the deal. Right. So there's a lot, which is why I said, how much time do you got? Because if you don't have time to do this, you better invest with somebody who does, somebody like myself. Right. Or work or do like I did in the beginning, latch on to somebody who now is like me. But in the beginning, they were doing their thing. I was like, look, you tell me what you need and I'll go get it.
Right.
You know, as a matter of fact, if you tell me how to do it, you will think you did it when you're done because I'm just going to do what you say. I'm going to as is everything. I don't need to. I don't want to be smart, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so that's the main thing. And I know we went extremely over. I apologize, guys. But the last thing I wanted to share with you guys as it relates to this, and I'll take on some more questions. First, did I answer your question about seeing a real deal? Did that make more sense?
Yes, yes, yes. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
our audience saw that so things can make a lot of sense to them actually
For
seeing
sure.
the deals. So yeah,
Okay.
thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that because like I said in the beginning, I can kind of go because I geek out about this stuff, right? But you know, visuals are very important, and
Very
that's a huge property. I want to say that might be on close to 5 acres. I'm not sure.
mm,
Yeah, roughly about 5 acres or so. So, like, if you did an aerial shot of that property, you can see the magnitude of that property. It's well
wow,
kept. It's beautiful.
it is.
So, you know, yeah, Omar, for your questions, like in a deal like that, you're going to keep that deal. You can keep that deal 10 years, 20
Mm,
years, right? Those people had that deal for 30. So, I
nice.
mean, imagine because this thing is cash flowing, is paying you every month. Why would you sell something that's making you money? You know, buying apartment complexes is buying a business. It's a business. You
Okay.
don't have a people problem anymore because if you buy that property, you're buying employees, you're buying managers, you're buying maintenance people, you're buying everything,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's why I said you're not just buying real estate anymore. You're buying a functional business based on its income, and it needs to pay everything and also pay you for your time, which
Mhm.
goes right back to how much money do you need,
Right. So
right?
in
Yeah,
closing, okay, if someone that's watching this show today, they want to go out today and go look for their first property, what would you suggest that they do? Like, what's I know that you gave us steps, but
yeah.
what do you say? Go out and do what? Like, what should they do? They want to
Right
go out.
now, just drive your neighborhood. Go drive your neighborhood and go look at properties that you like. Don't look at properties like like people said, look for the boarded up properties with the high grass. Don't look at those.
Right.
Those are befores. What would make you what would raise your status? What would make you excited? What would make you want to tell everybody, hey, we did this deal, right?
Okay.
So drive your neighborhood, start taking a look at what you like and what you don't, all of it.
Okay.
That would be first. And start writing the addresses down. And then when you get home, Google the addresses. Um, Start looking at the rents and start saying, okay, there's 10 units here, 20 units here, 50 units here. All the rents are $1,500 or whatever. Like, start getting yourself familiar with some of these things. They're basic, but those basic pieces are extremely simple, but they're a telltale sign that somebody's put in the time and energy into becoming proficient, right?
So get to
Yeah.
know your area. Get to know your
Yes.
area. Get to know your rent. Everything. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you
Very
so
important. Very
much,
important.
Victor. You have been so much help. I'm
Thank you,
sure
guys.
a
I
lot of
appreciate that.
people have gotten a lot of valuable information from this show, and I really appreciate you very much for coming.
I
Thank,
really appreciate you guys too. I really do. Thank you.
thank you.
Definitely. Thanks a lot, Victor. This has been awesome. I mean, like you said, I think that the first thing is just taking that action, learning our market and getting in there and really understanding what's going on in our market. And that gives us the opportunity to really be able to talk to these investors and build relationships. And like you said, really keep on the conversation, keep the conversation going.
Hmm.
Yes, definitely. And the last thing I definitely want to leave you guys with is real estate itself is a contact sport. I really mean that. And the most reasons why people don't invest in real estate, never get in the business, whether they're going to do it themselves or invest with other people, is confidence, right? There's just something they don't know. So not knowing that makes them not either trust the deal because they don't know, or they don't trust themselves. That's it,
Hmm.
right? Nothing else matters. So the more you know, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more you can do and you will do, right? Because there's a level. So without that, it ain't there. And people are only confident in what they see, not what someone tells them. So when you see it for yourself, you know it exists. That's why this part is so important. Because I can give you a bunch of websites and all that other stuff to look online, but I can take a picture of a property, make it glossy, pretty, and you're like, man, that's awesome. Let's look at it. But then when you get there, it doesn't look that way, right?
Hmm.
So when you put reality to that, you do have more confidence in your own actions to know
Right.
that.
Right.
So yeah, so that's super important. So thanks for that. I appreciate you guys asking that question and saying that too, because that's where your real action will meet the real. So
Right. That was some great information. Thank you.
For sure.
Definitely.
Okay.
For sure. So you guys have any other questions before we roll out?
I mean, you were so just on top of everything. I'm not normally speechless. So I don't really have much to ask. It's like, okay, what can I ask next? But you covered everything almost,
For sure. Well, I
on this
appreciate
particular topic.
it.
It's so
Definitely.
many more. It's so much more that you have
Right.
to give, but that's a whole nother show,
Yeah,
But
for
as
sure.
far as this topic, you totally covered it for me. And I
Okay.
hope our audience as well.
And everything's good with you, Omar. You have any other things that I can cover? You good?
Yeah, I think I did. I was just curious as because, like you said, we're basically buying a business in this sense. So you're
Yes.
buying the management, you're buying the tenants in a sense. When you look at a property, is there ever a question of occupancy at the moment when you purchase it?
Yes.
So are there a certain number of doors that need to be filled when considering a purchase?
Yes. I would like for them all to be filled.
Right.
So
then what's the minimum then? I guess that would be the better direct question. What's the minimum that you would look at?
So there's two ways to do that. There's market occupancy. There's what the area says. Hey, look, all the properties in this specific area, on the average, like in a banking situation, they'll say the market occupancy is 97% or 98%. That's market. That's like a statistical data that they crunch the numbers for all the properties in a specific area. Now, there's three actually. So there's market occupancy, and then there's economic occupancy, or like how many people live here, right? If there's 100 units and there's 95 occupied, that's a 95% occupancy. That's a good occupancy. If market's 97, then we know we only need 2 units filled. I can pull a bum off the street that can afford it and put him in the unit. But then you have the other occupancy, which is like you said, like some owners like, hey, we're at 80% occupied. Like I looked at a 136 unit deal with a group that, we're kind of looking at bidding on this deal. It was a $48 million deal. And the document that the brokers gave us, right, because it was an off market deal, said that it was 97% occupied. And then when we got there, we got another piece of paper that said it was 82. So then the big glaring thing is like, what's going on in an area where, most of these properties are at 97 and this one's at 82. What's happening? Right. But then you can, then you start seeing, they're in renovations, they're doing this, they're slow moving, turning over. So to answer your question, I personally want to see market occupancy or better. And if it's better, I know that they haven't raised rents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
People are just staying there. They haven't done that. So I call it an irresponsible owner.
Okay.
Right. Like I don't, that's a problem. Right. That's why they instilled the rent control situation in California. Right. Because people are irresponsible. So I personally want to see the highest occupancy possible. It's like buying a business, like we said. How many tenants, how many customers do you want walking through the door every month? Mm-hmm. People who are going to pay you as many as I can get. Like what's the capacity of this room? 100, fine. Let's fill it up with 100 people over and over and over again. So to answer your question, that's that. So you're always like, hey, what's market, and then what's it actually at today? And then there's other ways to do that. How many of the 100 are actually paying, and what of them are not? So there's other ones, but just glaring for me, I'm like, what's occupancy market, and then what's the current occupancy? Because every dollar for us is like, $2,000.
Got it.
In value increase. So right off the bat, I'm like, hey, if I can fill this unit, I'm making money, and my investors are going to make money. So that's a great question. But be honest with you, if you're at a 10 unit, if you're looking at a small, that's why I said small deals don't work. I used to do them. If you got to start there, great. But if you got a 10 unit building and one of your doors are down, you're at 90% occupancy.
Right.
You lose 2 tenants, you're at 80. Now the bank's going to call them like, hey, what's happening?
Mm.
That don't look good. So it's not a good look. So these are super important. I'll go over this. So these are great questions. So what I'll do is, especially on our next one when we have one, I will go over first. Well, that's a little bit deeper. That's around how to analyze a deal. But I think it's better to learn how to actually control the deal with creative financing or whatever finance you're going to do next.
Yeah,
okay.
This will answer that.
That'd be awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, to know.
Definitely.
Thank
Definitely.
you, Victor, so
Yeah,
much.
for sure. Thank you guys. I know this. I hope I didn't bore you guys to death because I have
Yeah,
funner stuff to talk about. But this is, but
that was fun. That
yeah,
was fun. This was fun to me. It was great information.
No,
Very, very,
cool.
very informative.
it's very informative, very, very, very informative. So, I mean, and I like this because it actually gives us a starting place. You know, it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, this is where we start, not necessarily just understanding what you're doing, but saying, how can we do it? How can we apply this information right now, today? And I think
Yeah,
that that's
Right.
one of the values that you've given us today with that insight of being able to just go out and take action. And it doesn't cost us anything but to go out and really learn our market. It only
right,
really adds value to our conversation that we have
right.
with investors or possible owners.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you sit with an investor and you go, hey, you know what? We looked at 5 deals this week. Um, they all look great. They're all in great areas, and they're like, oh, really? Okay. What do you think? So you have a great conversation starter in lines of real estate now, and most people don't do that. So, man, yeah, you're absolutely right, Omar. So,
Awesome.
Right.
for sure.
All
Well,
right.
cool, guys. Hopefully, and I promised to only do 30 minutes. Hopefully, this was seen as an over delivery, not a waste of time.
It
So,
wasn't. It
uh,
wasn't. And we
cool.
appreciate that you're willing to go overtime to really make us understand this. So thank you so much for that. Because
For
that's
sure.
we know you're busy. Totally. You have a lot going on, but you're taking out the time to help the community to actually learn how to better it by, fixing up properties, getting people out here. Not even so
Mhm.
much fixing it up to like a real big fix, but just
Right.
to make it, better by you coming in and fixing little small things that need to be that tenants will appreciate and
Yeah.
they can come and live comfortably.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for that. I
Yeah,
For
I
sure,
think
appreciate
man.
I
For
think
sure.
you got to actually just hit on a major point. I think that what we're doing here and what you've just actually lent your time to, which we're extremely grateful for, it really is an alignment with what Learning Live is doing. Like what
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
doing what you're doing right now in actually investing in communities is actually the whole idea of what Learning Live is about. It's about highlighting the individuals that are actually putting the time and the effort into investing in communities. And by you investing in these places in these apartment complexes, I mean, there's no better way to invest in the community than that way, than to create a space of living for people. And
Right.
not just to have something there, but to have something of value. And that was one of the key points that I heard you say, is that you're not just looking for just the old rundown apartment complex. You're looking for the ones that actually have value, ones that you would actually live in. And I
right.
think that
Yes.
that's a great point to like really highlight, because it's all about that. It's about creating a place and creating an environment that's comfortable for us to grow and to flourish in. And I think that comes back to the whole point of that you mentioned in the beginning of this, of wealth. It's not necessarily about just the money. It's about health. It's about being able to be in a position that, or an environment that cultivates growth and development. And I think that that's,
Right.
I mean, that's an awesome perspective to have.
Yeah,
For
I
sure. For
agree.
sure. No, thanks for that. And be honest with you, and Uganda, you said something important. Omar, you said that too. Like some of the stuff that I'm looking at, when I think add value, I just think care more. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not thinking paint and stuff like that. Like if we don't do anything more than treat people with respect at a larger community, we make sure there's no trash blowing around in the parking lots. We make sure there's nothing going on that people are picking up their, dog poop from, stuff like that. Kids can play comfortably. That's caring, and people will pay more for that when they know you care.
That's
So,
right.
our goal is to take down 4,000 apartment units in San Diego County. So I'm going to be responsible for 4,000 families. If you take that and divide it by two, that's 8,000 people. And I've already
Right.
been in that situation over and over again, in my career, because we've done over 100 properties over in Hawaii. So like, I take keeping a roof over someone's head. I make it so important to me. Like these people are relying on me to show up every day and do what I say, and to make sure I kick my team in the ass to make sure that's happening, and they're treated with respect, and we care about them, right? That's that. So if anything, learning live and being able to share that with people, it sounds foo-foo to say that because this is about money, right? You got to get paid, but sometimes the way to making more and securing your own future is that, right? So Cool. Cool.
For
It looks
sure.
like it looks like we have a question from Raphael. He says, at what stage did you decide to become a renter only?
Ooh. All right. The short version is that when I started off in this business, I took over a property with Bob and stuff like that. And I've always been a renter, right? I understand rent. I've either, I left home when I was pretty young and, work, rent, work, rent, work, rent. So then when I started doing real estate, I was already renting. And then all of a sudden I had all these properties and people were renting from me, right?
Mhm.
I had like 24 tenants. Some of those, were like 8 plexes. Well, I had 24 properties. Some are 8 plexes, 6 plexes, blah, blah, blah. So then all of a sudden I was like, okay, all these people are paying rent. They're paying this. I understand that. And then I started doing subject to houses, really nice homes. And I started buying properties from people who bought homes who had gotten financial problems, really nice places. And we weren't talking about people who were broke. We're talking about people who had money. And I was like, whoa, I've seen it at every level. And I'm like, I didn't have an ego first about buying my own home. I watched my mom buy her own home when she was young. That was important to her. My parents split up when they were young. My dad's bought 2 homes. So I've seen both sides of the coin. So I'm like, okay, well, I take over a lot of I own a lot of property from people who bought their own homes, and I made a lot of money off those properties. So it doesn't really, for me, real estate, it didn't make sense to rent. And to buy my own property and be in a situation for fear, really it was fear, that I would be in their situation later, that I would be looking for someone like me to bail me out. So that said, renting gives me flexibility so I can move with quickness. Like the whole scope of my whole business model is speed. I don't need to be the biggest. I need to be the fastest. And I cannot be the fastest if I'm bogged down to some house that was my dream that eventually becomes a nightmare. Because like I said, things happen, right? So I became a renter through that. So thanks for that question. It's a great thing. And I'll be honest with you, the United States is going to become a renter nation anyways. It's already happening because we rent houses, we rent pool tables and picnic tables now. We rent cars. It's becoming so normal. It used to be that good. And I'll say this really quick. It used to be that people rented because they couldn't afford it, but now wealthy people are renting.
Okay.
Right. So I think that's important to share. So that was a great question. That is like my big reason for apartments because I'm bullish on rents. Rents will continue to go up.
You're right. You're right. A lot of wealthy people are renting for sure. Very wealthy people are renting. They are. But we're gonna wrap it up now, Victor. And
thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
It was awesome information. Everything was perfect. I cannot wait till you come back. I can't wait. Because I will pick your head forever. For sure, I'll pick your brain forever. Because you have so much just vital information that can really turn people's lives around. So thank you so much.
No, for sure. And also thank you guys too. Thank you guys for even wanting to do this and wanting to be successful in this. I really, really appreciate it. It's more important than you think. I love people who want to succeed and who want to grow. Right. So I'm always willing for that anytime. Seriously. So I really appreciate that. So, congratulations for you guys to wanting to succeed in this and keep growing. And especially with Learnin, I think this is a great platform. It's going to help a lot of people. And I'm definitely going to continue to be a part of it. Any way I can help, I'll always be here.
Awesome. Awesome.
Ruben, Omar, can you tell us the next show that's going to be coming up?
So our next show is going to be on January 21st at 11 a.m. and we'll be doing Learnin California. So on that show we'll be talking about just the California market, what's going on here in the market in California, and we'll kind of get a little more local as well and look at some local communities. So we're looking forward to actually hosting this one and being your local partner.
Awesome, guys. Awesome.
Oh,
I appreciate you guys. You guys have a great day.
You too.
All right, you too, Victor. Thanks a lot, man. It was great having you.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.